My name is Thomas McCoy, 9720 Little Gasparilla Island. Commissioners, I actually feel just a little bit awkward standing up here with the purpose I have in mind, which is to remind you of one of your most fundamental obligations as a governmental entity. And I'd specifically like to address in that context Commissioner Constant's opening remarks, which set a kind of context for this inquiry. What I want to remind you is that your most fundamental obligation as a governmental entity is to regulate, to interfere with individual liberty, to interfere with individual economic interests only when there is a really good reason to do so. The question that has been asked here is the wrong question. The question that's been asked here is, why should certain homeowners be exempted from regulation? The proper question, the question you should be asking yourselves, is why should those homeowners who have spent $5,000 or more on their own private water system, in the absence of any available water system, why should they be regulated? Why should their liberty and their economic interests be interfered with and destroyed? What are the reasons you've been given to justify regulatory interference? The question about exemption is misleading. The question about grandfathering is misleading. The real question is, why should these homeowners, why should I be subjected to the kind of regulation that would destroy $5,000 worth of my own private property, which I would have to abandon, and force me to spend thousands of dollars to connect to Jack's for-profit water system, and then spend thousands of dollars more each year to buy from him a product that I do not need? That's the question you need to be asking yourselves. And when you ask yourselves that question, look closely at all the reasons, spurious reasons I would suggest to you, that you have been offered over the last year for the regulatory interference with my freedom and my economic well-being that you are being asked to impose. You've been offered reasons like preventing theft of water. There's been a long string of spurious reasons, and Commissioner Constance, the one that I find most objectionable is the suggestion that I should be forced to abandon my $5,000 investment. I should be forced to abandon my own personal liberty to produce my own water to my own standards in order to help pay the costs of water for my neighbors who chose to purchase their water from Jack's for-profit water system. That is not a legitimate regulatory reason to force me to spend my money to pay for their water. So let me just return to my basic point. I ask you to think about this as an issue of why should you regulatorily interfere with individuals like me on Little Gasparilla Island, and have you been given sufficient regulatory reasons for the serious regulatory consequences you're being asked to impose on me and my neighbors who have their own private water systems? Thank you for listening to a nearly endless list of arguments over the last year, and I hope for your sake and for ours we can bring this to a conclusion.
Thank you, sir.